Anam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedangscha prahinoti tasmai tam hadevam atmabuddhi prakasham mumukshur vai sharanamaham prapadye. We who seek liberation take refuge in that infinite reality which illumines the hearts of all, who is the source of the Creator himself, and who has given forth the infinite knowledge, Veda. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So first, let me wish a happy Father's Day to all fathers out there. This year we kind of missed Mother's Day, which we shouldn't miss, but the reason for that was it was the Sunday when Swami Sarvadevanandaji was here, and it was also Buddha Purnima, and so it kind of got lost in his visit and the talk about the Buddha. So belated Happy Mother's Day and a timely Happy Father's Day. So the topic today is Father's Day is Dharma Day. And no, that was not decided by the UN, and it hasn't been declared by the US President, nor by the Prime Minister of India, nor by anyone else. I just and will develop the idea, the meaning of fatherhood, the deeper psychological, social, and spiritual meaning of fatherhood. So by way of introduction, today, I don't mean this day, but nowadays, is a time when everything is being called into question. Everything is being questioned. That the old norms, the old traditions, the old beliefs, everything is up for question, examination, analysis, challenge. It used to be when bumper stickers were much more popular. I think people got tired of dealing with old bumper stickers and trying to get them off of their cars. And found that it wasn't so much fun to deal with old bumper stickers as it was to put on a new one. So they haven't been as popular. But it used to be back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, bumper stickers were everywhere. In fact, I had a friend whose truck, I used to tell him, was held together only by bumper stickers, which he had all over the truck. And so one bumper sticker that used to be very popular, and you still see this statement on little signs and things, was question authority. So that is the basic attitude nowadays, question authority. I also used to say that when you see somebody with that bumper sticker, question authority, you can be sure that either they don't have children or they don't let their children read that sign. I'm going to question all authority, but nobody should question my authority. So again, everything is up for questioning, for challenge nowadays. The old heroes, all of the old heroes of different societies, Indian society as well as American society. It may not be yet as aggressive in India, but it is there, as you all know, and certainly very aggressive here and in Europe, where the great heroes of yesterday are now debunked. Everyone tries to find some flaw within them so that we can say, oh, they are just ordinary people. They shouldn't be worshipped, they were just ordinary people with all the limitations that we have. The motivation behind that is not a good one. The motivation behind that is that we want to tear down everything that's good down to our level, because then we can feel good about where we are. If there's an ideal higher than us, then we feel that I have to work towards it. That's something that I'm not there yet, so I have to work towards it, and that's work. And so it's much easier to tear everything down and say that everybody's just as bad as I am, And so I don't have to listen to anybody. I don't have to believe in anybody. I don't have to look up to anybody. No, because we're all just trash. So it's not lifting ourselves up to a high ideal where we are all ideals, but pulling ideals down to where all of them are low. So anyway, that's not pertinent to Father's Day, but what is pertinent is the fact that all traditional roles and models in society are under question, including the role of fatherhood, the role of motherhood, the role of the family, the role of marriage. Gender roles, everything is in question, and some of it for good reason. Because one of the good things about the modern age is that there is a motivation towards equality. There is a motivation towards uplift of everyone. And that's a good thing. That Swami Vivekananda himself wanted and saw that as the brightest light in the modern world, that effort to give everybody their due place. He himself said that he was born for women and the masses, he said, for women and the masses. The masses meaning the common people who all over the world for thousands of years have been put down. In the age of the priests, when all over the world the priests were the leaders of society, then they held everybody down to protect their priestly power. When the age of the kings came and lasted for many, many centuries, thousands of years actually, then the kings put everybody down in order to hold on to their power. And then came the age of the Vaishya, the age of the merchant. The capitalists, when they held on to the purse strings of society and pushed everybody else down. Everybody works for us, we are the owners of capital, and everybody is going to do our bidding because we are in control. And so the masses were left out at all levels, at all these different stages of social life. And today, as Swamiji said, is the age of the Shudra. The danger in the age of the Shudra is that the Shudra, like everybody else, like everyone else, wants to pull everyone down to their level, so make everybody uncultured. But Swamiji saw that with the spread of modern education, there was the hope that instead of pulling everything down, that there would be the uplift of the common people. The uplift of the common people. So he said that he was born for the uplift of the masses and for the uplift of women. And he spoke a lot specifically about the uplift of women, but he came for both. So that's one of the positive signs in the modern age, is that there's the move towards personal autonomy in a good sense. That is, that I don't want anymore to be discriminated against. I don't want to be held down. I want to have my place in the sun also. So from a traditional standpoint, that looks like egotism. And yes, it is egotism, but there's good egotism and there's bad egotism. If you tell a slave that you should remain a slave, to try to get out of your condition is egotistical, saying that I'm as good as everybody else and I'm going to make my own decisions. Well, no, that's egotistical. So you remain a slave. Well, no, that egotism is good, which says I want to be a slave. I will stand up. I won't allow this treatment to be given to me. I demand equality. So that's a rightful attitude. So that we see in the modern world. We find that systems of government are in question, that political systems are in question, economic systems are up for question and for challenge. Religion is up for challenge. Religious traditions are being challenged. The leaders of society are being challenged. Everything is being challenged, including the place of family. What a family is, what constitutes a family, the importance of family, the importance of marriage, and so forth. All of these things are being called into question today. And in the long run, I think that's good, because unconsciousness is not healthy. When something has been accepted for thousands of years just because it's there, and we go forward with it just because it's there, and we just assume that it's good because it's there, we don't really know the value of it. To know the value of something, we have to be conscious of what it is and why it is. Otherwise, we're just accepting things. So admittedly, right now, because everything is being challenged, everything is being questioned, there is a great deal of uncertainty in society, and that's not good. There is a great deal of people who feel lost. People don't know who they are. People don't know what they're supposed to do. People don't know what is right, what is wrong. And that's not good, but it's probably a necessary stage as society comes into a new formation. Swami Vivekananda, as I've said before, he said that with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, the Satya Yuga has been established. We look around and we don't see any signs of Satya Yuga. It looks like the worst parts of Kali Yuga are flowering right now. But no, that's because when there's a transition between yugas, there is a great social upset, because the new doesn't come without the destruction of the old, without the falling apart of the old. And so the questioning of everything, that I see as part of that process, where people are trying to come to a new configuration of society. And so today I want to focus more on the family and the what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father. And again, just as I always say when I do speak on Mother's Day, I didn't this year, but when I do, I always say that motherhood, or the ideal of motherhood, is not restricted just to those who have children. Motherhood is an ideal which is present in everyone, especially present within women, even present in the hearts of men as well, but especially manifest in the hearts of women, whether they have children or not. And so fatherhood is a quality manifest in all, but especially manifest in men, whether they have children or not. If they have children, of course, it's manifested in a special way, but it's there within everyone. So it's generally recognized that the family is the foundation of society. And I think that's true. The family is the foundation of society. When we analyze matter, we try to find what are the component parts of matter, and we come down to atoms. And then, of course, it was found that atoms are not the ultimate division of matter, that they are subatomic particles. So there's the effort to find out what's the fundamental basis of matter. And so in society, what is the fundamental basis of society? Well, of course, we get down to individuals. They are the ultimate units of society, but the first grouping of more than just an individual by him or herself, the first grouping is the family. And so the family is the foundation of society, because an individual doesn't make up a group. An individual can hardly survive by him or herself. And if they remain as individuals, of course, they have no progeny. If they're completely isolated, one person, then they have no progeny, and so they die out, and the species dies out with them. And so society means groupings of people, and the fundamental grouping is the family. And so the family is the foundation of society. And if it's the foundation of society, then the health of the family is the foundation of a healthy society. So again, nowadays the family itself is being brought into question. The goodness or the necessity of the family unit is being called into question. The roles of parents, of fathers and mothers, are being called into question. And again, in the long run, I think that's good, because people will, through that analysis and awakening and struggle and questioning, eventually the fundamentals will become clearer, and people will come to a new configuration which works for society. Swami Vivekananda himself had great faith in society itself. He said that it was a mistake for a few people. And of course, that means, because of the way society all over the world was, a few men deciding everything for the way that everyone should live. No, he said hands off. Let society, let there be freedom in society, and society itself will form its own traditions, its own institutions, etc. He said the same about women. When someone asked him, Swamiji, what do you think the future of women will be? And Swamiji said, am I a woman that you ask me that question? Hands off. Women will decide their own future. And so instead of people, and usually men, saying that women should be this, 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 and this, and we're going to put it in the scriptures, in our religious law books, and then for thousands of years everybody's supposed to follow what we have set out. No, women will decide for themselves. And so similarly, society will decide for itself. Swamiji said that he pointed to certain basic differences, very, very basic differences between Indian society and Western society. And he said that both are experiments. Both are experiments, and neither of them is finished yet. So let them run on. Through that experimentation, until they have run their course, we don't know which is best and which will lead to the best results. So let them run on. So again, he had that great faith in society. That society will figure out what's needed. So again, the ideas of society the ideas of the family have changed a great deal. The ideas of fatherhood, of motherhood have changed a great deal. The ideas of parenting have changed. We're coming out of a period that has lasted for thousands of years in most parts of the world, not everywhere, but most parts of the world, of patriarchy. And that's something that you hear a lot of. You may not hear about it so much if all you listen to is the mainstream media. They don't talk so much about patriarchy and everything. But if you're in tune with modern thought, modern thinking, social thinking and so forth, you find the analysis and criticism of patriarchy everywhere. The criticism that men have held control of society, have guided society for thousands of years, and that women were put down, women were in a subsidiary position, and so that model is coming to an end, and I think it is coming to an end. It's not whether it should or shouldn't, it is coming to an end. You see it happening everywhere, and there are good reasons for it happening everywhere, and that is that, again, as I said, one of the characteristics of the modern age is everyone wants their own place in the sun. And it won't do to say, well, women are supposed to be in the kitchen, and they're supposed to be in the home, and they're supposed to do this and that, and they're supposed to obey me because I'm a man. And that won't work anymore. And that's good that it won't work anymore. But it also means that people are not quite sure of what they're supposed to do, not quite sure of that. I think everything that we have in society, as Swami Vivekananda again used to say, that the institutions of society, including something like patriarchy, they came to solve a problem. They came because they came as solutions to problems, not that people sat in committees and decided, well, shall we have a matriarchy or shall we have a patriarchy? What do you think? Let's vote on it. No, it didn't happen that way. It just happened organically and step by step and mostly unconsciously, just the way things happened. But certainly one reason why the patriarchy was dominant around the world was for a long time, social life was extremely unstable and dangerous. The protection of the family, the protection of society, and the protection of the family was extremely critical to the stability of society. When you had armies and kings always fighting, and armies invading, and robbers and plunderers and people coming through societies, if you read the details of history, it's amazing that humanity has survived. The number of times that the people coming into another country and razing the country to the ground, killing and raping everyone that they could find, stealing everything, and it happened over and over and over again through the centuries in all parts of the world. It's just phenomenal that human beings survived. I think about myself because as a kid I was very adventuresome and daring. I always wonder how it was that I grew to adulthood, how I didn't kill myself along the way. But in the same way, so the fact that society survived is an amazing tribute to the human spirit, that in spite of the insecurities of society over the ages, that humanity survived. And so when physical strength and determination was necessary in order to protect society, then perhaps that was one of the large reasons, maybe not the only one, but one of the large reasons why men were dominant. Because of the physical strength, women are stronger biologically. Men are stronger with muscles. And when muscles were important, then the importance of men grew. But today that's not as true, and we hope that that remains true, that we still have wars all over the world, but there's a growing recognition that this is not the way forward. Why are we still behaving like animals? Why do we still behave like animals? Why do I see another country and think that we know better than they know, so let's go and throw out their government, conquer them, and then we'll make them like us because we're better than they are. Our system is better than theirs. Our way of thinking is better than theirs. Our culture is better than theirs. So we'll wipe them out and establish our way of doing and thinking things. And so we go into country after country, destroying countries, cultures, and so forth. Why do we still do that? That's such a foolish and such a primitive way of behavior. The fact that we still have wars, we still have, yes, there's a place for defending oneself. That can never be taken away from people. Swamiji himself said that you have to have the right to defend yourself. But going into another country and telling them that we don't like the way you're doing things, and so we're going to bomb you because you're not doing things the way we think you should, that's not defensive action, no matter how much. Leaders always claim, when they do that, they claim that they're defending themselves. No, they're not defending themselves. They're being aggressors. Why do we do that? We should have grown out of that. And so hopefully the age is coming when that sort of thing will become less and less. The more we become aware of the whole world, the less we can engage in that type of action, because we begin to see, and it's clear for everybody who opens their eyes and doesn't just listen to what they're told by their government, it's clear for everyone to see that that's not the way forward. And so hopefully that age is ended, and the age when issues are settled by brute force, that age is coming to an end. And so the age of women is beginning. Swami Vivekananda said, if I have to be, Swamiji speaking, if I have to be born again, I may decide to come as a woman, because the future belongs to women. Swamiji himself said, I may decide to come as a woman because the future belongs to women. Now that doesn't mean that, okay, men, get out of the way, you're no longer needed. I know, both are good, both are needed. But it's certainly the time for women to come forward. It's the time for all nations to come forward, everyone to rise up, for people of all ethnicities, of all races, of all types of people to rise up and claim their place in the sun, and certainly for women. So there's a need for change from the old patriarchal system. One reason for that need for change is simple fairness. Simple fairness. It's amazing that just a few decades ago, when I was a kid, these ideas were hardly prevalent. Yes, there were the women struggling for the vote and all of that. But it was just assumed that women should not do certain things, and women should not be in certain places, and women should not participate in certain professions. These are a man's profession, that's a woman's place. Women should be teachers and nurses, or else housewives, and men should do the important work. It was just assumed that women will get paid less because this is a man's world. And of course the man is going to be paid more because men are the bread earners. And so many of those things were considered practical necessities. But that thankfully is ending. So one of the reasons for the uplift of women is the need for the uplift of women is simple fairness. Another reason is, pragmatic reasons are that women tend to, because women are more involved in the family, and that's something I'll come to when I talk about, come in a moment, to more specifically to fatherhood. Women have been traditionally, and I guess that in the future they probably will continue to be more involved in the family than men, though men certainly need to take their rightful share of work. But women will remain, because of it's something that you see throughout nature, with the exception of a few species like seahorses and certain birds like penguins. But otherwise you find that the women, or the female of the species, is more involved with the nurturing of the young. And so if you educate women, if you help women, then you help many more people. You help the coming generation more than if you just educate the man. By educating women, you're helping many more people than by educating men. Both need to be educated, but women need education. That much of needed social change comes through women. If you study social movements, you find that when women became aware of a social need, it was often the women that brought about social change. Until women were convinced that a change was needed, the change didn't happen. But when women became convinced, then there was a natural, otherwise change came by force from top down, which was not good, just by force. We're going to force you to do what I think you should do. But when women are convinced of something, then change takes place. And then civilization and culture really are highly dependent upon women. You find that a man who marries, a man who gets married, they become more culturally sensitive most of the time. In fact, one of our Swamis, Swami Vandananandaji, who spent 12 years in Southern California before he went back to India and spent the rest of his long life there, he used to tell the monks in Trabuco that when you join a monastery, there are no women in the monastery. And so that civilizing, enculturating function that women naturally have, that you don't get. And so you have to consciously, deliberately develop those qualities in yourself, because you don't have a wife that says, why don't you pick that up? Why did you leave that lying there? Why did you make that mess there? Why don't you go clean that? Haven't you taken the garbage out yet? When are you going to cut the grass? All of these things that many men just wouldn't even bother with until a woman tells them, that makes them conscious of it. And so he said that no, living in a monastery where there are no women who have the feminine influence on the monastery, you have to develop that feminine influence yourself, or you have to internalize that feminine influence, because that is enculturating, because it is civilizing. And so the uplift of women is not needed just because of fairness. It's needed because that will, through that more than through anything, will be the uplift of society. And so change is already taking place. It'll take time. But now coming to the other side, women, things are opening up. They haven't opened up enough yet. It's amazing that the American Congress has not yet been able to pass an equal rights amendment. It's just simply amazing that that hasn't been able to pass. The simple guaranteeing of equal pay for equal work, that has not yet passed. It's amazing that they can't get that through. It's been since the 1970s they've been trying to get that through, and it still hasn't come through. But things are changing. And so if you look into society, you find that the old restrictions and constrictions on women are loosening. And now many people, including many women that I've heard and read, are becoming worried about men and boys, because the outlook for women is opening up. It's not open enough. It needs to go further, but it is opening up. And so there's an optimism that things are opening, things are changing. With boys and men, they seem to be, in many cases, left behind. I won't speak to India because though I've lived in India for 14 years, it's a vast country, and I lived a very special type of life in an ashram. I didn't live in the Indian families and so forth, so I have no experience of that. But I do have experience, of course, of Western life, both European and American. And so I can say that in many ways that boys and men are in trouble nowadays because the old model of what it is to be a boy, what it is to be a man, those are changing, and there are no good guides for boys. For women, again, though things have not changed enough, women also have their share of many serious problems, but the outlook is getting brighter. For boys, it's getting darker. Not because people are restricting them in most cases, not because they're being controlled more and more, but just because they're lost. They're lost. And you see that and you hear that from teachers in schools and so forth. And so boys and men are in trouble. What it means to be a man, that is not clear anymore. Since the 1960s, young men were told that you need to be more emotional. That it's all right for boys to cry also, that you should let your emotions go and be free with your emotions, and you should feel free to cry and everything. So men started doing that, and nobody liked it. What are you doing crying? Even women were saying, well, what's wrong with you? Why are you just an emotional mess now? And so what men are supposed to do, many are not sure of anymore. Boys are naturally more restless than girls. That's a very natural phenomenon. And I noticed that in growing up, that boys couldn't sit still. In school, in elementary school, 1st through 6th grade, the girls were always so well behaved. And they were so intelligent. They were at least 1 or 2 years, though it's the same age, they were at least 1 or 2 years in development ahead of boys. And so they would listen in the class, they were attentive, they would do their homework. I personally, and many others, but I personally was always getting into trouble because I never did my homework. And I would come in and the teacher would ask for my homework and I said, I don't have it. And then I'd be sent out into the hall. And the boys were always looking out the window and always talking and playing tricks on each other and throwing wads of paper and stuff. And the girls were sitting there listening to the teacher, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Can anybody say what 2 plus 8 is? Yes, ma'am, I can. All of the girls raising their hands. And so boys are naturally more restless. But then starting in, I don't know when it started, in the 80s or 70s or 80s or sometime, the overdiagnosing of ADHD, attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity disorder. And so behavior that used to be considered normal for boys, suddenly it was being treated as a medical problem, and boys were being medicated. Yes, some might have needed it, some extreme cases, but most of them, they were just boys. They're naturally restless. I hated elementary school so much that if I had been born 20 years later, certainly I would have been a prime candidate for Ritalin. I couldn't pay attention in elementary school. I hated every minute of it. I would be looking out the window throughout the class, just wondering when I could get out and go run into the woods and play and hide. And so that the punishing of boys for what used to be just ordinary behavior, yes, there is some behavior certainly, but there have to be norms that people are taught to adhere to, and there are lines that boys, whether boys or girls, they shouldn't cross. That's certainly true. Children need guidelines. They need limits. In fact, psychologists say that children, by pushing their limits, they're actually asking for guidance. They're asking for, where are the limits? And boys especially, girls it comes later, but as far as pushing goes, but boys are always pushing every limit. If you put a limit to them, then they'll start pushing on it. But that's partly psychologically, not consciously, intentionally, but deeper psychology. They're trying to find where the limits are, and they're testing the limits. And so there's a difference between girl behavior and boy behavior, just as there's a difference between women's behavior and men's behavior in general. There's a great debate. So how much of that is that difference between girls and boys is nurture and how much is nature? The old nurture-nature argument. Are girls and women different only because they've been taught to be? And boys are and men are different because they've been taught to be different? That is, that's the nurture argument. That girls and boys are basically the same except for biological differences for reproduction, but otherwise they're the same. And society teaches them to be different. And so I know of people, and they're publicized cases, and I also know of people who were radical and decided that, well, I'm not going to bring my children up with strict gender roles. And so they dressed their boys in girls' dresses and dressed their girls in boys' clothes. And that led to tremendous confusion in the children, tremendous problems, psychological problems for them later. And so the other argument, the nature. Well, certainly there's a mixture of both. In most such debates in life, you find that both are true. That if there's is it this or is it that? Well, usually it's both, whatever it is. And so that's the case here also. Certainly society defines certain roles for women and certain for men. But there are differences that are endemic to boys and to girls as well. My own sister, when she had her son, she had two girls first, and then she had a son. All of them are long grown now, but the boy, they didn't have a television in the house. They didn't go to movies, and they didn't have a television at all in those days. And my sister was a pacifist, so she never had toy pistols or anything like that. And the older kids were girls, and so of course they never had them. But the boy, from the time he was about 2.5 or 3 years old, he would go out into the yard and pick up a stick and start using it as a sword, fighting with the trees. And she said, where did he get that from? He's never seen television. We don't go to movies. I don't read him books about soldiers and knights and things, Robin Hood and things like that. And yet, from the time he was 2.5 or 3 years old, he was anything he could pick up, he was using it as a weapon. And so it didn't come from nurture, it came from nature. And so there are these differences. It's true that not everyone fits into a strict mold. There are men who are much more feminine, and there are women who are much more masculine. And that's okay. And that's one of the good things today, that people are recognizing that that is okay. That it is okay to, if a boy is naturally feminine, for that to be okay, and if a girl is naturally masculine, then that's okay. But that doesn't mean that you don't give any guidance. It doesn't mean that there aren't certain, that you don't help a child grow up into a healthy role. The thing is that you don't force them. Like my older brother, who's passed away now, from the time he was little, he had no interest in sports, and he loved to cook. From the time I was a little kid, I remember him organizing cooking contests in the neighborhood, cake baking contests and things like that. That's what he loved. What he wanted for Christmas was a little princess stove. It was one of those toy ovens that they used to make for girls that was heated by a light bulb. And they made special cake mixes that you could put in, and just with the heat of the light bulb, it would bake a cake. And so that was the sort of thing he wanted. And so, if that's what they really want, if that's what they insist on wanting, then that's okay. Let them have it. Not everyone has to be the same. But in general, that forcing a person into taking a boy and making him wear girls' clothes, and taking a girl and making her wear boys' clothes, and giving the girl weapon toys and giving the boy dolls, no, that's not a healthy thing. And so there are natural differences between the two, as long as we recognize that there are exceptions. So children need guidance. They need role models. They need guidance. Just not force beyond a certain point. That is not good. So what does it mean to be a man? One thing is, of course, that men have greater physical strength, upper body strength. Women are biologically stronger. And one of the reasons for that is that women have, at the chromosomal level, is that women have two X chromosomes in the gender-determining chromosomes, whereas men have an X and a Y. And the Y is actually just a broken X. The other leg of the X is broken off. And so men are more subject to genetic disorders than women are because of the Y chromosome. And but as far as physical strength goes, especially upper body strength, men are stronger, have the potential to be stronger. So that physical strength has played an important part in society in the past. It may play a less important role now because the needs for it are not what they were once, when you had to defend your home because you never knew when someone would come to invade your home. I remember a brahmachari that was with me in training center at Belar Mutt back in 1970. He was first year when I was second year, so it would have been 1976. He was from the Sundarbans area, which at that time was still very wild, jungly. And so he said that still there were dacoits that would come into the village. And the king dacoit would come in on a palanquin carried by his servant dacoits. He would come into the village and just they would set him down, and he would have rings all over and bracelets and jewelry all over and everything. And he would tell the villagers, "You bring your jewels and your wealth to me." And the villagers would do it because if they didn't do it, they would be killed. And so that sort of thing was still happening in the wilder areas. And so that sort of thing was true all over the world. But nowadays, that's less and less true. And so that physical strength is not as important. It's there, but not as important. But at the same time, men in general, and again, in everything that I'm going to say, we have to take that as in general, in the mass. There are always exceptions, and the exceptions should be respected. But an exception doesn't make a rule. And so, in general, men are more prone towards adventure and risk. In fact, in societies where adventure and risk was very much promoted, then when that was taken away, for instance, with the American Indians, the Native Americans, when their culture was destroyed by the white man as as American civilization spread through the West and their civilization was destroyed, then the adventure and risk from their life was suddenly taken away. They were used to having a life of great adventure, great physical freedom, and freedom of movement, freedom of hunting, and so forth. Suddenly, they were sitting on reservations with food being given to them. They're not allowed to hunt. They're not allowed to wander around. They just sit there in their blanket, and here's your food for the month. You don't need to do anything, just sit there and take your food. And so suddenly all of the adventure and risk was taken out of their lives. And so many stories about the young people, how they tried to find a way to reintroduce some sort of adventure and risk in their lives. And so men naturally tend towards more adventure, tend towards more risk, whereas women naturally tend towards more protective mode. So that adventure and risk-taking, that's a necessary part in society. That's an important role in society, because if we're all timid, not that women are timid, no, but if men turn timid and are afraid of risk and afraid of adventure and so forth, then the movement of society ends, and we just sit at home afraid to move out of the home. And so it's that ability to take risks, to be adventurous, which brings the element of change to society. It brings the element of development to society. Men are more, and again, not exclusively, but more prone towards concentrative thinking, whereas women are more looking at more, multitasking, more. Women traditionally for thousands of years have had to pay attention to this cooking on stove, the child calling for help, the husband coming home, all sorts of things happening at once. And so women have to have a a wide-ranging attention to many details, whereas men are more prone towards focusing on one thing. And so that concentrative element. Men, the element of detachment, that takes place in bad ways. The phenomenon is good, and it's a part of masculine nature. The bad ways that it happens is, to use a gross example that's very common in Western civilization, where human relationships are broken much more easily. That is common experience among men and women in the West, that a man and woman who have had a long-term relationship, maybe a marriage or at least a deep friendship and relationship, if it breaks within 1 or 2 days, the man is ready to find somebody else, whereas the woman for months is still hurting from the break in the relationship. And so men much more easily leave everything behind and just go out. I'm going to strike out on my own. I don't like the limitations of home. I'm going to go out on my own. Whereas women are much more conscious of responsibility to children, responsibility to family, responsibility to society. And so these, again, with exceptions, but these are tendencies. And so that men also, that tendency towards transcendence. Not that you've known many men who transcended, but but that you find that in the very image of Shiva and Parvati, or Vishnu and Lakshmi. But Shiva, who dwells in the cremation ground, whose mind is going to the absolute, forgetful of everything in the world, and Parvati, who's sustaining the whole universe. You see Ramakrishna, the difference between Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Holy Mother living within the family, taking care of all of her relatives. She was utterly detached also. And she had transcended everything, and yet in the midst of her transcendence and detachment, she was still taking care of the family, looking after everyone's welfare, taking care of all the guests, everyone who came. And so these differences, with exceptions, are, I think, largely natural. The tendency of men for adventure and risk, that's an important part in society. The tendency of men towards concentration, towards detachment. That, I think, in time, as people find what their natural role is, that these will, both sides will be valued, and both sides will play their part. And many places where the two are completely equivalent, yes. But where there is difference, there's that need for a recognition of the equal importance of both. And so the role of the father. The mother is considered to be the first guru of the child. The first guru for each of us is the mother. But the second guru is the father. And as time goes on, the role of the father becomes very important. The fatherhood is extraordinarily important. Motherhood is primary. Because the mother is the one who has carried the child for 9 months, the one who gives birth to the child, the one who gives nourishment to the child from her own body in the beginning. But then the place of the father gradually becomes important also. And so the father is the second guru, and traditionally, whether this will continue, but traditionally the father was, part of the importance of the father was in teaching discipline to the child. Yes, the mother disciplines the child also, in ancient times and in present times as well. But the father disciplines in a different way. The father brings a element of detachment to the child also. I remember my own upbringing. I still have a memory sort of seared into my memory of when I was about 4 years old. Once in a while, maybe once a week, my mother would make for breakfast for all of us. We had all of our meals were sit-down meals with the whole family. She would make French toast. And so because I was a kid, she would cut my French toast into little squares that I could pick up with my fork, and she'd pour the syrup on it, she would cut it, she'd put the butter on it and everything. And so one day when I was about 4 years old, we had French toast, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I said, "Mama, can you fix my French toast?" And my father said, "Why do you bother your mother? You can do that yourself." My mother was ready to get up and cut it for me and put the butter and the syrup. And my father said, why are you bothering her? You do it yourself. And so at the moment, I didn't like that. I thought, well, I like my mama doing it for me. Why should I have to do anything? Let her do everything. But no, that was important. He was the one who said, no, you leave her alone. Give her some peace. Let her eat. You can do it. And so that... Again, I don't know Indian society in the family matters, but in Western society, the man always had the part of beginning to separate the child from the mother. Not in an aggressive, not in a complete way, but in the sense of giving the mother her space now. Now you're old enough to do things yourself. You can take care of it yourself. And so whereas the mother, because of her motherly tendency, wanted to do it for me, the father said, no, put a stop to it. He can do it himself now. So that discipline and guidance, the separating of the child from the mother, and then exemplifying Dharma, that which is right, doing that which is right. Yes, the mother also has a very important place there. But that is one place where the father has a special role of exemplifying that which is dharmic, that which is right, that which is not just based on emotional decisions or just on what I want my child to feel good or not to suffer. But no, this is the right thing. This is the right thing. This is what you have to do. Whether it's comfortable or not, whether it makes you happy or not, there's certain things that you have to do. And so this is what you have to do. So again, that doesn't mean that the mother has no part in that. The mother has a great part in that. But that is a special function of the father and has been recognized since ancient times in societies around the world, that the father has a special place in, because the bond between the mother and child is so strong, recognized in India and all around the world, recognized especially in India, I should say, as one of the beautiful things in Indian culture. But it's there in other cultures as well, if not as well recognized and well nurtured, but it's there. The tie between the child and the mother is so strong. The father establishes in a special way the distinctions for the child. What is right and what is wrong, what must be done whether you like to do it or not. I remembered that also with my father, that if I wasn't feeling well in the morning on a Sunday morning, I would say, I don't want to go to church. And my mother would be sympathetic. And my father said, well, are you sick? Are you throwing up? Do you have fever? And I just don't feel well. I said, well, you're going to church. Many times I don't feel well either. I still do what I have to do. So you're going to church. Get ready. And so exemplifying and teaching Dharma. So women have a special place in the transmission of culture, the transmission of civilization. And that, of course, includes Dharma. Men also have a part in the transmission of culture and civilization, but a special place in transmission of Dharma, and women a special place in the transmission of culture and civilization. And then the father, because men tend to be more risk-taking and adventurous than women, with exceptions, then opening to the child the world of adventure, the world of exploration, the world of healthy risk-taking. What happens when risk-taking and adventure are taken away from people, then people start taking risks in alternative ways, like gambling, like excessive drinking, alcohol, and other things, even gang behavior. Gang behavior is quite understandable. Why children entering into gangs? It's partly because of fellowship. Partly, of course, it's just external pressure. You join our gang, or we'll kill you, or we'll hurt you. But part of it is the wanting of community, wanting to be part of a special group, and part of it is adventure and risk-taking. And so if children aren't given legitimate and healthy risks and adventure, then there's a danger of taking unhealthy and destructive risks. So the father's importance grows with time. The need of a daughter for her father, very special need between a daughter and her father, the need of a son for his father also, the extraordinary relationship between a father and both the girl and the boy. The relationship is different, as you all know, those of you who have children, and everybody knows that. The relationship between a father and his daughter, the relationship between a father and his son are different, but both are very beautiful, and both are extraordinarily important. And that we need to foster healthy human relationships. Because today, when everything is being questioned, everything is being doubted, human relationships, human institutions are all being questioned, called into question, doubted, then again, people become lost. They don't know what to do. I think that's as I've said before, that's a passing phase in society. But it does make the present day very difficult for many, many people. They don't know what their role is. They don't know what is legitimate. What should I teach my children? What should I not teach my children? So it's important for us to think through these things, because only, as I said at the beginning of the talk, the value of the present age of questioning everything is that we become conscious of things. We become conscious. We don't accept things just because we were told, and we follow things without knowing why, or knowing where, or to what end. If we begin to question, we begin to understand the what and the why and the how and the towards what. Toward what end are we moving? But we have to question carefully, not question just by being overly ready to throw everything out when we don't have anything to replace it with. No, that is one of the dangers we face today in society, especially in Western society, but it's coming to India as well. You see it growing in India. So in recognition of the great place that the father has to play in the family, and the great place that the father has to play in the society, I offer my salutations, and my best wishes to all of the fathers here today, and to the fatherhood which is manifested in all. That within the hearts of everyone. Just as motherhood, as I said, is manifest in the hearts of all, so fatherhood is manifest in the hearts of all. And so there's that common Hindu prayer that all of you know, that Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva, thou art our mother, thou art our father. Our very relationship with God is based on the first relationships we know, the family relationships. We look on father as father. We look on father as mother. We can even look on God as our own child. We look on God as our friend. The next relationship, outside of father and mother, come brothers, sisters, and friends. So all of those relationships, our relationship to reality itself, to God itself, is based on those. And so the health of society is dependent upon the healthy relationships in the family, because those are the foundations of society itself. Even our relationship with friends and our relationship with God is dependent upon learning healthy relationships from our childhood. So may we, in whatever way we can understand, foster those healthy relationships among our own people, in the family unit, and in society at large, because we recognize the great fundamental importance of those relationships. So with that, I'll close. See if there are any questions.
I just want to say this was wonderful.
Oh. Thank you, Shoma. Thank you. Okay, no questions. So I'll give a closing chant and then announcements. Om madhuvatarithayate madhuksharanti sindhavaha madhvirna santoshadhihi madhunaktamutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudyarastu nah pita madhumandho vanaspatir madhumagum astu suryaha madhvirgavo bhavantu naha. Om madhu, om madhu, om madhu. For us who seek the truth, and for all living beings, may the winds blow sweetly. May the rivers flow sweetly. May the herbs yield us sweetness. Sweet be the night and the break of day. Sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Om, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness. So this week, Tuesday and Thursday, we'll have the regular classes. The rest of this month, we'll have the regular classes. The Gita class on Tuesday evenings at 7:30 and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class on Thursday mornings at 11. All are welcome. And next Sunday, we will have our question and answer Sunday. It's a week early because the 4th of July comes in the beginning of July before a Sunday. And so I want to speak on the last Sunday of June on Swami Vivekananda, who was so much associated with the 4th of July. And so the last Sunday of this month, I'll speak on Swami Vivekananda and the American spirit. So next week, we will have our monthly question and answer session. So that's all of the announcements for now. And so we'll have Arati.